What up everyone, it is Toshi and today we're going to be talking about The Garden of Words. So, I watched this movie about a week ago and I have quite a lot to say. Number one, it wasn't a very long movie. I believe it wasn't even an hour long, but in that short amount of time it really manages to grip you in, and it has a very deep impact on your feelings, especially towards the end of the movie. It's not a very like light-hearted anime. It's very deep. The story follows Takao and Yukari. Takao being a 15-year-old student and Yukari being a 27-year-old teacher, which right off the bat is very weird, very unusual and very out there. But is Takao and Yukari both on rainy days? They both sit in this sort of sheltered park bench area. I'll put a picture of it up on the screen. And Takao is usually skipping school and Yukari is obviously skipping work, but at this point when they first meet, they don't know each other. On rainy days, they meet up with each other quite a lot. They get to know each other, they develop a connection, and we see that Takao's daily life is obviously, school, work, and obviously he's really into shoe design. He wants to be a shoemaker, a cobbler one day in the future. And he eventually starts, preparing and designing a pair of shoes for Yukari to he says that to help her walk again, which is used as a metaphor quite a lot in this anime. And I believe like the way I interpreted that was sort of to be able to walk again meant not literally because they could both walk fine. It was just sort of to be able to build an emotional connection with someone, to be able to trust someone again, to be able to build that deep psychological romantic connection with someone. I think they were both very lonely characters, and I think loneliness is a very present theme in this anime. But I think, they were both very lonely and they were both looking for a connection, and that's why, they kept going to the same spot, they kept talking to each other, kept getting to know each other. But eventually, the rainy season ended, so they both stopped going to the park bench because, well, it wasn't raining. They both stopped showing up, but eventually when it starts raining again, they start meeting up again, and a lot has sort of changed in their lives, Well, Yukari realises that she's not really moving forward, she hasn't really gone anywhere in life, and that's sort of what's bothering her. But Takao, he's focused on, like I said, work, school, and, his future. And Takao eventually expresses his feelings for Yukari, expresses his love for her. And she shoots it down almost immediately, despite feeling the same way. And then Takao leaves the apartment, but Yukari obviously, in the end, chases after him, embraces him, and they have that deep fucking epiphany moment. It was really deep, really emotional. Words can't describe that moment, but I'll put it up on screen anyway. But yeah, and on the topic of this, the aesthetic of this anime was fucking beautiful. Like the aesthetic, the design, the editing, solid 10 out of 10. It was beautiful to watch. Even if you take away the characters and the story and everything else from the anime, the aesthetics and the design and the artwork alone is fucking beautiful. Especially when you consider that this came out in 2013, which was 10 years ago. So it was a very emotional film. It was a very deep film. It was very upsetting. I wouldn't say it was difficult to watch, but it was just very hurtful, but in a good way. You know what I mean? It was just like, it was a tearjerker. It made you want to cry. But Takao wanting to become a shoemaker, I thought that was quite unique. You don't really hear or see that a lot. Not a lot. Like who do you know that wants to design shoes? Who do you know that wants to be a shoemaker? You know what I mean? I thought that was quite interesting, quite unique, and I like the way that it was heavily implanted in the movie, when like he obviously, he designed a pair of shoes for Yukari. I like how they heavily included that in the movie. I think Yukari was a prime example of how just because you're an adult and just because you're a grown up, it doesn't really mean that you have sort of control over your life. I think when you're young, especially when you're a kid, you have this view of adults as having, they have their lives sorted out, everything's perfect, everything's in place. And then as you get older, you realise most adults don't even know what the fuck they're doing. You get what I mean? And I think Yukari was a prime example of that. I heavily recommend this anime if you haven't already watched it. If you haven't already checked it out, please do. It's on Netflix if you live in the UK. I imagine it would be on Crunchyroll, but I don't really know. But yeah, if you live in the UK and it's on Netflix, give it a go. It was really nice watching them build that sort of connection. It was really nice seeing them get to know each other. And, when they first met, it wasn't like the basic, what's your name? How old are you? Where did you go? Where did you go to school? Etc. etc. Like, they didn't know or ask any of that shit. They were just getting to know each other as people, like what they were into, what their hobbies and dreams were, and shit like that. They didn't really get to know the basics of each other. They just got to explore like the souls of each other, I guess, if that makes sense, to put it in a really like deep terminology. In the end, with Yukari moving away and Takao coming back to that spot, very, very sad, very upsetting, very heartbreaking. But that's the way life is a lot of the time. You meet people, you fall in love with them, but sometimes it isn't built to last. Sometimes life just gets in the way, and even though you love someone, sometimes, as cheesy and as cringy as it sounds and as cliche as it sounds, sometimes when you love someone, you have got to let them go. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people, especially as you get older, you sort of realise that. I think the majority of people have to go through that at least once in their lives. So that's pretty much all I have to say about this anime. I mean, it was very good. I really enjoyed watching it. It definitely made me tear up a little bit. It was very emotional, and it was great to watch. I got sucked in, and I was upset towards the end. I really felt for the characters, and I really wanted them to have that connection and to go further, but ultimately, they never did. But yeah, that pretty much does it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. This is Toshi, signing out.